everybody, welcome to this introductory program on the last and fourth course of this program. The course is titled MWG-004, Gendered Bodies and Sexualities, and it is part of the program PG Diploma in Women's and Gender Studies. Before we begin, let me introduce to you the panelists. I am Professor Anu Aneja. I am the program coordinator for the PG Diploma, and I am a faculty member in the School of Gender and Development Studies. And here we have with us Dr. Sunita Dhal, who is an assistant professor in the School of Gender and Development Studies. She is the course coordinator, so she will be talking to you about the various concepts that you will be reading about in this course material. So Dr. Sunita Dhal will now tell you about this course.
Thank you, Professor Anu Aneja. And here we will talk about the course content, the nature of the course. This course is context specific, which means that some of the concepts have been introduced to you in the beginning, like in course 1 and in course 3, but we are going to deal with or understand or analyze these concepts more specifically in different national and international contexts. The course has interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary contents in nature, as it is intersecting gender, body, technology, sexuality, disability and other different social categories while analyzing or while discussing this course. The course refers to various debates and discussions on bodies, technology and sexualities, and how do different individual experiences body in relation to sexual identity, in relation to their access to technology, and different socio-cultural processes. How does different socio-cultural processes influence the construction of gender bodies in a different nation, community, culture and society across time and space. Finally, the course will speak about the intersectional structures, like gender, as you must know, gender itself is a structure, but it intersects with other structures like race, disability, motherhood and sexuality. So this particular course will have different thematic areas. However, it will be covering the interrelations and interlinkages between these areas in multiple contexts and multifaceted ways.
As you can see, the course contains 4 blocks. The blocks are embodiment, which is the first block, abled bodies and disability, which is the second block, the mother's body, which is the third block, and sexual cultures, which is the fourth block. What can you expect to read in these 4 various blocks? We will look at issues of embodiment. What does embodiment mean? That is the different subjective experiences of the body and the links between gender and the body. We will look at the notion of abled bodies and disabled bodies. What is the idea of disability? How is disability constructed in society? And how is it opposed to the concept of ability or abled bodies? Then we will talk about gender and marginalization and society's definitions of the abled and the disabled and the marginalization of the disabled. Not only disabled women but disabled men as well in society. And how does gender impact the degree of marginalization? How do men address this? How do women address this? Then in the third unit, which is the unit on the mother's body, this unit will look at the maternal body in the context of culture. It will look at reproductive technologies such as surrogacy. It will look at the maternal body in urban India. Especially because this will be more relevant to our context. So we will be devoting one whole unit on the mother's body in urban India, so that you may be able to relate personally to some of these issues. Finally, the fourth unit is on sexual cultures. What do sexual cultures mean? Here we will talk about issues such as androgyny, myth and religion, the gendered body in myth and religion, the body in French feminist theory, a much more contemporary topic, and the critical analysis of French feminist theory, and how can we relate this feminist theory about the body to the Indian context. So we would encourage you to make all of these connections as you read this course material. And of course, sexualities across cultures also means how sexuality changes over a period of time and across different cultures, across different nations, etc. So all of this will be covered in this particular block.
Embodiment is the first block of this course, and as Professor Aneja has spoken about embodiment, so what does embodiment means? It means the subjective experience of any individual who is living and experiencing through his or her own body. So embodiment is a varied concept. It cannot be applied universally. The first unit of this particular block is having 5 units. The first unit is Body in Biomedicine, which precisely talks about how does the discourse of science and power construct the human body. The second unit is Laboring Body, which talks about how do men and women occupy various forms of laboring body. If I say various forms of laboring body, that every individual carry reproductive body, maternal body and productive body. However, reproductive body is central to the female body. Vis-a-vis, the productive body is central to the construction of the male body. The third unit talks about racialized body. The central theme of this particular unit is the construction of pure race, or the notion of pure race has led to the marginalization of women of different color in the society. Unit 4 talks about performative body and about performance, and here we will be talking about performative body in relation to creating different gender identities. This is the first theme of this unit. And second theme you are going to talk you'll talk about the influence of different socio-cultural processes in the production of performative body. Like male performative body has always the element of hegemonic masculinities like aggression, self-reliance, drive, ambition, and these characteristics have always been incorporated in the production of the male body on the stage. Whereas with the female body, it is always the feminine behavior or feminine attributes have been attached to the performance of the female body. The last unit of this block is commodified body, which talks about women are always been seen as a biological resource and an economic property. In this economic, when we think of women as an economic property, there are various social practices like surrogacy, prostitution, pornography have always contributed to the reproduction of same stigmatized images for women. Now we can move to the second block, which is on able bodies and disability. In this particular block you have 3 units. Unit 1 talks about discourses of ableism and disabilism. Here in this unit you will be introduced to various concepts of and definitions of ableism and disabilism. For instance, ableism as a theoretical tool does not succumb to any criteria or any measures or standards, whereas disabilism is always been measured, weighted in relation to ableism, and the societal attitude towards disabled people or able people. For example, disabilism is always been viewed or connoted negatively. Hence, that is a very obvious attitude of people, obvious attitude of society towards disabled people in terms of help, elimination, marginalization, support. So these contradictory themes will be discussed and critically analyzed in this particular unit. Unit 2 is on disability, sexuality and motherhood. That how does disability as a social category influencing women with disability differently than men with disability. In this unit, we will be specifically talking about disability, motherhood and sexuality. Like disabled women is always viewed as asexual. Hence, there is a very careless attitude of the society towards disabled women. Therefore, disabled women always exposed to different forms of sexual abuse, risk and vulnerabilities. Similarly, motherhood, which is a very, as we said, for the female body, maternal body carries the central importance and which defines the female both reproductive and productive labor, whereas for disabled women the right to motherhood is not been given. And in this unit you can discuss the interrelationship between reproductive right, motherhood and disability. Unit 3 is on disabled masculinity. This particular unit is talking about how do we define masculinity, particularly hegemonic masculinity. And hegemonic masculinity is seen as a standard to achieve by other individual or other men. Some characteristics like as I discussed earlier with you, self-reliance, aggression, strength, power, drive, ambition. These are different characteristics of hegemonic masculinity. Hence, disabled men are always been subordinated by these constructions of hegemonic masculinity, and women, men with disability, men of different class, men of different color are put as inclusive social categories by the patriarchal roles and those who are in the privileged position. Block 3, that is the mother's body. This particular block is having 4 units. Culture and the maternal body is focusing that mothering experience is varied and it is lived through the mother's body. The whole question of happiness and pain is always been and subjective experiences of mother. Maternal body is culture specific. Some culture romanticizes the construction of the maternal body. At the same time, a woman is always been seen as a good woman in relation to what sort of body that she carries, like whether a body of a mother or a non-mother. And in this context, like women face different forms of abuses. Unit 2 talks about reproductive technologies. You must be aware of the use of reproductive technologies in this global market. In this particular unit, we will be looking at 3 central themes. The first one is the feminist assessment of reproductive technology, which means there are different feminist theorists. How do they argue the use of reproductive technology? Second theme you will be learning is about body politics, which is a very important concept within feminism, that how body, particularly female body, is under the surveillance of technology. That and here technology is an apparatus, and every time different medicines like contraceptives, IUDs, IVF, in vitro fertilization, all these are controlling the female body. And is it a matter of choice for women, or is a question of oppression that you can learn in this unit? And third, a central theme is access to technology. And in this access to technology, we will be looking at technology from the third world women's perspective, or third world feminist perspective, and the perspective of lesbian women. Whether all women have the right to access reproductive technologies, if it is a matter of choice. These things that we are going to question in this. For instance, in some countries, in some IVF clinics, lesbian women are not allowed to access reproductive technologies. Similarly, for the third world, only contraceptives are available, whereas other expensive technologies are not available to them. Unit 3 is on surrogacy, and these Unit 2 and 3 are interrelated. The use of technology is because there is a demand for surrogacy. Surrogacy in particular sees women as an economic resources, and in this unit you will be learning about different forms of surrogacy arrangement, traditional gestational surrogacy, traditional and gestational surrogacy, and how in the current era women of developing countries are increasingly entering into the commercial surrogacy for financial reason. And India is the best example, and how surrogacy is growing as an industry in the Indian economy. This is the main theme. And the fourth is the maternal body in urban India, which I would request Professor Anu Aneja to speak on this particular unit.
So as you have seen in this block on the mother's body, the first 3 units have introduced you to some very important but broad and general concepts and themes. The fourth unit, which is the maternal body in urban India, is talking about a very specific situation, which is the situation of mothers in urban India, and what does it mean to be a woman who is a mother in urban India. So we will look at this concept of motherhood in urban India in a cross-cultural context first. That is, we will compare the roles of women as mothers in urban India with women as mothers in urban areas of other cultures, specifically Western cultures. We will look at what does it mean to be a mother in terms of what are the different roles that women have to play as mothers, and what does this mean in terms of their gendered identity. Are these roles freely chosen? Are these roles imposed on them? In what ways do they curtail their freedom? In what ways are they providing them with more liberty or more agency in terms of their lives? Also, an issue which is going to be very important in this unit is the issue of mothers from different classes and different castes. And here we are looking specifically at the middle class, but we will be analyzing this in order to get a feel of what it means to be a mother in a certain class. How does your class impact your role as a mother? We will also look at, since we are talking about urban India, we will also look at domestic labor, that is maids who come from rural areas to urban areas and who are mothers either themselves, and what does it mean to be a migrant worker from a lower class and lower caste in an urban setting, from a rural setting but in an urban setting, and also what does it mean to be mothering other people's children, that is to be employed in households where you are the mother of children who actually belong from other classes or other castes, and how does this impact your own identity and your idea of yourself as a mother or as a woman. We will look at motherhood within patriarchal and capitalist structures. How does patriarchy influence the whole notion of motherhood? Is the notion of motherhood something which is freely chosen, or is it something that women feel impelled to become? That is, you have to conform to the idea of woman and motherhood as one common concept. In other words, can you be a complete woman without being a mother? These are questions which are looked at from the perspective of patriarchy and of course from feminist critical perspectives, and also capitalism. How does capitalism impact what it means to be an urban mother today? How does consumerism impact the mother's body and the construction of the mother's body? The idea of laboring bodies, that is mothers as laboring bodies, will also be touched upon here. And of course we will look at beauty myths. How do these impact the whole notion of the female body, but especially now the mother's body? Does the notion of the beauty myth also impact what kind of ideal maternal body is aspired towards? The notion of public spaces and private spaces. How do mothers perform in a public space? How are they expected to perform in private spaces, etc.? All of these ideas will be looked at in this particular last unit of this particular block. As you can see, there are 4 units in this block: androgyny, myth, religion and the body in French feminist theory and psychoanalysis, and sexualities across cultures. In these various units we will be looking at the whole notion of androgyny, but also androgyny through myth, religion and the body. That is the link between religion and feminist perspectives. We will be talking about feminist theology, that is when feminists approach religion and they adhere to these religions but from a feminist perspective. We will be looking at various gender roles within religions. In India we will talk about the Bhakti tradition and the role of women in the Bhakti tradition. In the West we will talk about Wicca, which is a form of pagan religion which was not really accepted, but it is actually a woman-centered, woman-only religion, kind of marginalized, so it's very interesting for you to look at this. Then in myths we will also talk about the whole notion again of an ideal beauty for women, deformity, fertility goddesses, how these were considered to be empowering for women. What is the role of fertility goddesses in myth and how these tended to get marginalized. We will also talk about androgyny within the unit on myth and religion by looking at, for instance, the notion of or the figure of Ardhanarishwara, that is Shiva as half man and half woman. That image, what does it symbolize in terms of gender? So the representation of gendered bodies in religion and in myths will be covered here. So in unit 3 of this block, the body in French feminist theory and psychoanalysis, we will look at some important contributions of French feminists, and the reason for doing that is that these theoretical contributions have impacted motherhood discourse across the world. For instance, we will talk about the Marxist and materialist approach of Monique Wittig. We will look at psychoanalysis through the work of Julia Kristeva, and we will look at the critique of both of these positions from the point of view of Judith Butler. You will also look at the work of French feminists like Luce Irigaray and Hélène Cixous, who talks about the notion of writing the body, écriture féminine in French. All of these is going to be explained in detail and in very simple terms in your course material. Then let's look at the last unit, unit 4, Sexualities Across Cultures of the same block. This unit talks about the notion of what is sexuality. That is sexuality a fixed concept? How does society define sexuality? How does sexuality change across cultures? How does sexuality change across time periods? Also, how is sexuality a marker of your class, your status, your own politics, etc.? Another very important theme, sexuality and power, and sexuality and identity. How does sexuality impact how empowered you are or feel, and how do you define your own identity in terms of your sexuality? All of these ideas also, we encourage you to make links between these ideas and all the other courses, all the other blocks of this course that you will be reading about. As I said, you would need to build connections between courses, between all of these different themes and topics. Develop a critical perspective on the body and on the gendered body, and establish connections between the course material and your everyday life. Finally, also very important for all students, I am sure, is the whole question of examinations, and so how unit end questions and check your progress questions can help you with these. We encourage you to attempt the check your progress questions and unit end questions which are provided to you inside the course material. This will help you to think critically about the material. Try to attempt the unit end questions, because these are very good practice for your exams, because they ask you to write longer essays and read the suggested readings provided.
For any queries and information, you can write back to me. I'm Dr. Sunita Dhal, and my email address is sunitadhall@ignou.ac.in, and I hope you'll enjoy reading the course material, and thank you.
Thank you.